In 1992, Amitav Ghosh asked a provocative question. Why isn't there a great American oil novel? For a country so deeply dependent on oil, where the industry is incredibly powerful, why have American writers produced so few major works about petroleum? Ghosh suggested several reasons. Oil is hidden away in remote extraction sites, corporate and political interests keep it quiet, and Americans tend to be geographically and politically inward looking. But MacDonald, in his article Oil and World Literature, argues that Ghosh framed the question too narrowly. The issue isn't that oil literature doesn't exist, it's that we need to look at it differently. MacDonald points out that Ghosh probably overlooked Upton Sinclair's 1927 novel Oil, which was republished in 2007 and made into the film There Will Be Blood. Sinclair's novel deals with oil speculation, labor unrest, and political corruption in California, all Central American themes. Even more significantly, he argues that Herman Melville's Moby Dick, published in 1851, is arguably the first great oil novel, even though it's about whaling, not petroleum. The novel depicts a megalomaniacal hunt and harvesting of a natural resource all over the world. It stands as a prototype for the global extraction and commerce that would later define the oil industry. But Ghosh's question points to something deeper. Why did he miss these texts? MacDonald suggests it's because Ghosh was looking for a novel that fit a narrow definition of American and great in a traditional sense. The problem is in the absence of oil literature, it's how we conceptualize and categorize it. MacDonald raises an important question. What counts as oil literature? Must a work explicitly be about the oil industry? Or does any novel set in modern life qualify given that oil shapes almost everything we do? Consider this. Oil is in the plastics that surround us, the fuel that powers our transportation, the synthetic fabrics we wear, the cosmetics we use. It shapes our governments, our economies, and our wars. By this logic, any modern novel could be considered petrofiction, a work shaped by the hydrocarbon age. MacDonald provocatively asks, is not every modern novel to some extent an oil novel? Think about the great Gatsby. The characters' wealth, their cars, their luxurious lifestyles are all enabled by oil, or the corrections, the suburban American life, the consumer goods, the mobility are all petro dependent. The oil is untapped, bubbling under the surface, ready to be extracted by a new generation of oil aware petrocritics. MacDonald's central argument is that oil literature is best understood not as national literature but as world literature. Why? Firstly, oil is inherently international. As soon as oil is discovered, it requires multinational capital, foreign expertise, and global markets. Oil flows across borders, and so does oil literature. Secondly, oil creates shared themes across cultures. Petrofiction from different countries often deals with similar issues: labor relations, ethnic tensions, war, ecological destruction, political corruption, and the easy encounter between local communities and foreign corporations. Third, oil literature travels. Just as oil is imported and exported, stories about oil move between cultures. Writers in different oil producing regions adapt and respond to each other's work. MacDonald identifies several recurring features in oil literature across the globe. First, the encounter with the foreign. A central trope of oil fiction is the arrival of the stranger, usually an American corporate representative, who brings oil development to a local community. This encounter is often portrayed as sinister and destructive. In Abdul Rahman Munif's Cities of Salt quintet, set in Saudi Arabia, one character says, "The Americans came and the demons came with them." The novel traces how oil modernization destroys traditional ways of life. Similarly, George Mackay Brown's Green Woe, published in 1972, set in Scotland's Orkney Islands, shows how North Sea oil development disrupts a remote community. In Sadhuvi's Love in the Kingdom of Oil, the oil company is a shadowy force that controls everything. Second, environmental justice. Oil fiction frequently deals with ecological destruction. The land is poisoned, the water is contaminated, and communities are displaced. These narratives connect local environmental struggles to global energy politics. Third, labor and class conflict. Many oil novels center on strikes and worker resistance. Ralph de Boissier's Crown Jewel, published in 1952, depicts the 1934 strikes in Trinidad's refineries. Laura Restrepo's The Dark Bride portrays the 1948 strike in Colombia. These stories reveal the brutal conditions of oil labor and the solidarity that emerges among workers. Fourth, political corruption. Oil fiction often exposes the alliance between multinational corporations and local elites. Petrodollars corrupt governments, enrich in tiny minority, and leave the majority impoverished. The resource curse, the paradox that oil wealth often leads to worse outcomes for ordinary people, is a central theme. Fifth is the threat of violence. Oil is inseparable from war and conflict. Whether through foreign intervention, civil unrest, or the simple violence of extraction, oil fiction is rarely peaceful. One of MacDonald's most interesting points is that American oil fiction often finds itself abroad, embedded in novels written from other perspectives. Consider the end of Sinclair's novel Oil, where characters discuss expanding American oil interests internationally. One character notes that there was no way to take it from these greedy foreign rivals except to mask the power of the government against them. By the novel's close, American oil imperialism is spreading through Eastern Europe, Mesopotamia, and the Caribbean, won by American bribes and held by American battleships. Subsequent petrofiction from around the world registers the global reach of American oil capital. In Munif's Saudi novels, in Fuentes' Mexican novel The Hydra Head, in Sadhuvi's Gulf novel, the American corporate presence is a sinister, destructive force. The great American oil novel might actually be the Saudi novel, or the Scottish one, or the Mexican one, because American oil is everywhere, even if American writers have not fully reckoned with it. The world literature framework offers important advantages. It resists national limitations. Oil doesn't respect borders, and neither should our literary analysis. A world literature approach allows us to see connections between texts from different regions. It reveals uneven development. Just as oil is unevenly distributed and consumed, world literature recognizes that cultural production happens on unequal terms. Some regions are centers, others are peripheries, but all are connected. It shows how themes and forms travel. Oil fiction from Nigeria, Trinidad, Saudi Arabia, and Scotland shares family resemblances. The striking of oil, the arrival of the company, the transformation of community, these are all global patterns with local variations. It challenges canonical hierarchies. By looking beyond the traditional great novels, we can discover a wealth of petrofiction that has been undervalued or overlooked. MacDonald concludes with a challenge for critics. Oil is so pervasive in modernity that it is everywhere in literature, yet often not refined enough to be brought to the surface of every text. It sits untapped, bubbling under the surface. This means petrocritics have work to do. reading for oil's presence even when it is not explicitly mentioned, paying attention to the material conditions of literary production, the oil in the paper, the fuel in the distribution trucks, the energy powering of the author's laptop, connecting the dots between the oil economy and cultural imagination. McDonald's essay helps us understand that oil is not just a resource, it is a global story. It connects Saudi desert communities to Scottish islands, Trinidadian refineries to Colombian oil fields, American corporate boardrooms to Nigerian villages. Oil literature is global and domestic, local and international. It registers the unequal movement and uneven development of the world system. It exposes the hidden cause of our hydrocarbon culture while also revealing moments of resistance and solidarity. The question is not whether there is a great American oil novel. The question is whether we are paying attention to the full range of oil literature. Novels, photographs, films, and stories that document petroleum age from every angle. As MacDonald puts it, a new generation of oil aware petrocritics is needed to extract these stories from the surface of the text and bring them into the light. Understanding oil literature as world literature helps us to see our shared predicament. We are all living in a petro world dependent on a resource that shapes our lives in ways we barely recognize. The stories we tell about oil or fail to tell reflect our collective failure to face this reality, but they also offer the possibility of imagining something different.